It's finally here, guys. The new graphics cards from Nvidia are arriving, and it's based off the Turing Architecture as rumored and expected. Now, today at Siggraph, we had a keynote from Nvidia CEO Jensen Huang where he announced Nvidia's new Quadro RTX graphics cards, which will be used to power new workstations all across the world. Not only that, but Jensen showed the exact same demo from March, which was the Star Wars demo that ran on a DGX workstation with 4 Tesla V100s, but this time he ran the entire demo on just one Quadro RTX card. The cards announced were the Quadro RTX 8000, 6000, and 5000, with the $10,000 Quadro RTX 8000 coming with 48GB of GDDR6, 4608 CUDA cores, with the ability to NVLink with another Quadro RTX for double the VRAM and for combined computing power. The Quadro RTX 6000 starts at $6,300 and has the same amount of CUDA cores and features as the RTX 8000, except it has less VRAM with only 24GB of GDDR6. The $2,300 Quadro RTX 5000 has 3072 CUDA cores and 16GB of GDDR6 memory, with all cards running 14GB per second for that GDDR6 memory, and they will all be available in the fourth quarter of 2018. Now, this new Turing architecture introduced new features such as the RT core, which is made exclusively for ray tracing. That's what it stands for, ray tracing core. And it enables real-time ray tracing of objects and environments with physically accurate shadows, reflections, refractions, and global illumination for more photorealistic scenes. We're also looking at 16 teraflops of FP32 compute performance for the Quadro RTX 6000 and 8000. However, right now we have no clock speeds and we don't know what process the cards are manufactured on. Last but not least, these cards also support the new USB-C virtual link connector, and it will be the first card on the market to basically feature this connection. So that's all that's been confirmed from the keynote today. On to speculation for this next GeForce series of graphics cards that will be introduced for us about a week from now at Gamescom. I just want to talk about Adored TV's video. So a couple of days ago, Adored TV got sent some information from an anonymous source telling him about the new RTX 2000 series of graphics cards that was going to come from Nvidia. And at the time, I just didn't know whether to believe it or not, because I looked at all the information and it just seemed a bit strange to me. First of all, it was just that there was a lackluster jump for Nvidia generationally compared to previous generations. So I didn't know whether that was, going to be true. I mean, it was speculated to only be around about 8% faster than a 1080 Ti. And in the past, something like the GTX 1080 was 20% faster than the 980 Ti, for instance, or the Titan. And I'm used to seeing that 20% jump that we get from Nvidia from generation to generation. In addition, the core count seemed quite low at the time for me to think about, but the more that I think about it, the more that it might actually be true. But there's a couple of problems with this. It's a random anonymous source. They gave some information, but not a lot. And what they said isn't exactly concrete or verifiable. And I guess last of all, the source sent in information showing only 23 SMs across 4 GPCs. Now this means that at most you have to have 128 CUDA cores in an SM to get anywhere close to what we're talking about in Turing. And that would be 23 SMs, and if you times that by 128 CUDA cores, you get 2,944 CUDA cores. Now that's really, really close to around 20% more performance than a GTX 1080, and it's pretty close to the 1080 Ti's core count, but it's not quite there. It's also oddly close to Turing's 3072 CUDA cores for the Quadro RTX 5000, but after today's announcement, I just can't get on board with the rumor in Jim's video. Now, this isn't an attack on Jim because he's a really nice guy. I like his channel, I watch his videos, I respect him, he's a really good dude. And he knows and presented it as a rumor, so he said for people to take it with a pinch of salt, and we are. And he never presented the information to be 100% true. I want to be very clear with that. I'm not saying that he says believe the rumor. He never said that. I'm not saying that he said that this is going to be 100% what's happening. He never said that. He knows it's a rumor. He presented it that way. And I understand that. So I'm just saying that so that we don't have any sort of drama. And for all I know, this rumor in his video could very well be true. But I prefer to go off the try and true method of Nvidia's previous segmentation and branding rather than some rumor from an anonymous source. And that's not an attack on Jim at all because other outlets got sent this information. So for me, it's more of just a ruling against the anonymous source than it is an attack on Jim. Jim makes great videos. He's pretty much always on the money. There are a couple of times where, we have to do some sort of investigative work to kind of see if he's correct, and 90 to 95% of the time he is. But I look at this and I just think that this rumor is not in line with what we've seen in the past, and you're going to see why. So based off the past, Nvidia's Quadro 5000 series of cards tend to become what the flagship is on the release of a new GeForce series. So the P5000, for instance, was a card with 2,560 CUDA cores, and the GTX 1080, which was also based on Pascal, had the same amount of CUDA cores. If we go back to something like Maxwell, the Quadro M5000 had 2,048 CUDA cores. With the GTX 980, which was also a Maxwell card, it had the exact same amount of CUDA cores. So if the new GeForce RTX cards use the exact same Turing architecture, then they should follow the same sort of pattern. And that means that we should see the Quadro RTX 5000 become the GeForce RTX 2080, with a total of 3,072 CUDA cores, and that being 48 SMs, with maybe 8GB or even 14GB of GDDR6 at 14 gigabits per second. And I think, just based off that, we should also see the new RT core, and possibly even tensor cores for ray tracing capabilities in games being included in this, just based off the branding. So this is where I think we will see the performance advantage for Turing. It's in the GDDR6 memory at 40 gigabits per second, and it's in the RTX related stuff, and maybe some small little improvements, like we might be able to get some sort of clock speed improvement. I doubt it, but it might be possible. And probably some things like higher cache and less latency between the cores and better scheduling. So I think that's where Nvidia has made most of its advancement over Pascal. And the die size for the Quadro RTX 8000, so the one with 4,608 CUDA cores, was like 754 millimeters squared, I think Jensen said. So it's going to be a big chip, this 2080 card, but I'm not quite too sure how big it is because it was never said. And I still think that that's a winning strategy because, let me put it this way, there's nothing else on the market. And because of that, it's going to work. People are going to eat it up because there's absolutely no other option. Your other option is like a 1080 Ti. It's going to be too expensive compared to the 2080. And I think people want to have the RTX related features. So that's probably what Nvidia is going to do, and it's a winning strategy. We're going to see a lot of problems with this, but I don't know how Nvidia is going to deal with it. Maybe they have a large amount of stock available. I have no clue. Now, if we go back to the Adored TV rumor video, I do think that video still has some value because it basically confirmed that Nvidia is chasing this whole RTX branding thing. If you look at today's keynote, the Quadro RTX brand is a really big thing for Nvidia. They kept harping on and on about ray tracing, and it seems that they really want to associate their products in gaming or professional markets or even in the data center with ray tracing, and that's where they're putting the whole RTX thing in instead. So I think GeForce GTX is going to be gone, and they're going to have RTX instead. It's also a nice way to kind of signal to the lay person that this is something different. It's not a GTX card anymore. It doesn't just do graphics, it also does ray tracing. So if you have an RTX, it's like you're getting something better than a GTX, and I think the average consumer is going to understand that. But this is where AMD, or more specifically Radeon Technologies groups, just dies in PC gaming. And I really hate saying that because it means less competition, but Nvidia with their ray tracing core and so many other features like RTX and GameWorks, it means at least in PC gaming, Radeon's going to lose in any and all games or benchmarks that will employ ray tracing or RTX or any of the GameWorks features. And we've seen that in the past where GameWorks features like Hairworks have totally tanked the performance on Radeon cards. To be fair, it has tanked performance also on Nvidia cards, but it's not anywhere near as bad on the Nvidia card. Plus, Nvidia has, the mind share and the market share to aggressively force developers to use RTX features. And, if they employ that into their high and ultra presets for their games, for the graphics settings, then you can make sure that when benchmarks are done by the press for any new games that come out, Nvidia is just going to shoot right ahead with their RTX capability being far better than any sort of ray tracing implementation that AMD might have. On top of that, you got to remember, Navi is a really old architecture in terms of when it was designed. It was designed probably like 2-3 years ago, and the types of features that they decided to put in it are 2 to 3 years old. Ray tracing is a pretty new thing, so for Nvidia to chase ray tracing this bad, this early, just like tessellation, I think they're going to get the edge. And Navi's not going to have really anything to do with ray tracing. If it does have anything to do with ray tracing, it's going to be for something like AMD's ProRender ray tracing, and that's not going to be anywhere near as used or as good as Nvidia's ray tracing capabilities with RTX. So I think that that's where Nvidia is going to really have a huge edge over AMD. And to add further insult to injury, Fudzilla released a report stating that Navi is not actually a high-end GPU series. It's going to be like Polaris and the RX 480 and target something like the mid-tier to low-end market of gamers. They're not going to build something that's going to compete with, let's say, the 2080 Ti. It's going to be competing with something like the 2060 or the 2070 at most. An RX 680 is going to release probably with performance very similar or between the GTX 1070 and 1080. And Navi will just get absolutely destroyed by Nvidia's RTX cards in any future games that will leverage RTX features. And we've seen developers really go quite aggressive with their GameWorks stuff in the past. We've had developers like Ubisoft and Square Enix integrating GameWorks features into their game series such as Watch Dogs or For Honor. Ghost Recon Wildlands had GameWorks stuff. Final Fantasy XV is going to have GameWorks stuff. And we've seen Assassin's Creed games in the past, like Syndicate and Unity have it, but Odyssey might also have it. And if it does have anything to do with that, then it's going to be a really sad day for PC gaming, because it means us gamers are just going to have one choice, and that's going to be Nvidia. And that's because AMD just doesn't have the market share or the mind share in PC gaming to leverage any developers to use any of their solutions. We've seen it in the past with things like Vulkan. AMD has a lot of Vulkan support. They actually have the edge on Nvidia in Vulkan, but the problem is no one wants to use Vulkan. It's something new that they have to learn, and they don't want to have to do anything with it. On top of that, we've had things like Mantle in the past, which was the precursor to Vulkan, and that basically made it only into 3 games. So if we look at something like the Steam hardware survey, and I think that's a sample, but it's pretty reflective of the population of PC gamers, then I think we're going to be looking at around about 80 to 90% of PC gamers using an Nvidia-based product. And if that's the case, then yeah, Nvidia can just force developers on PC to use their RTX GameWorks technology. They're going to tout all the advantages that it has. They're going to say they have the first RTX cards on the market. They're going to say they have the majority of the market share. And they're going to use that absolutely to their advantage. And they're going to force developers to take up using RTX and GameWorks stuff, because it's the only way that you're going to have great performance for ray tracing on Nvidia graphics cards. Now, if you're a Pascal buyer, I think this is really bad news for you too, as pretty much any and all RTX features will be completely reserved for GeForce RTX cards and the Turing Architecture, that is at least until a successor arrives, meaning that if you have something like a 1080 Ti, you're going to pretty much lose in any benchmark where there's going to have any sort of RTX related features enabled. Not to mention that you also have slower memory, but you do have more CUDA cores, so there is that. But I think if you're looking at something where you're going to have a lot of ray tracing, maybe something might come out from 3D Mark that's a benchmark, then you're going to see the performance metrics just totally change in terms of which architecture comes on top. On top of that, I think that I'm really excited to see that there is something new, because that was like how I woke up today. My tone was really, really happy, but it's just changed over time. I could see the road ahead, and it looks to be pretty bad. We're going to have more price jacking due to lack of availability. We're going to have miners wanting to buy these cards because it's way more performance than we've had in the past. We're going to have Nvidia forcing developers to use RTX and GameWorks stuff in their games. We're going to also have Pascal being completely obsolete now, especially when it comes to RTX related stuff. So you're going to have to buy a new card if you want to have any sort of ray tracing stuff. And that makes Pascal pretty much inferior in almost ways that I didn't even conceive. And Nvidia just has AMD completely on the ropes now. There's no way out for AMD. They're at least 3 years behind, probably more like 5 years. And Nvidia is just way too far ahead at this point. They have the market share, the innovation, the features. They have everything, even the performance. So I really don't know what to say. I think that Nvidia is just going to win for the next 5 years. And so much so that they didn't have to move to a new node or a new process. I mean, it's totally possible they moved to 10 nanometers. And, I keep thinking it's on 12 nanometers, but I can't be 100% sure of that. I really can't. I still think it's on 12 nanometers, just based off the die size. I can only hope that I'm wrong. And maybe AMD can compete. Maybe Nvidia won't be so aggressive. Maybe Nvidia did move to a new process, and this is just the greatness of 10 nanometers or 7 nanometers or something like that. But for me, the writing is on the wall, and it's really all that I can see. It's just been like a slow build-up. You could see it about 2-3 years ago, and it's been ever since the Fury X. AMD's just been on the back foot in graphics, where the 290X was really the last true competitor that Nvidia had to face, and now they're just running completely rampant over the GPU market, where they almost have a monopoly in PC gaming. There is some hope, a company like Intel might come out with a graphics card and change things, but it's going to take a lot of hard work. It's going to take engineers that Nvidia has, so Intel's going to have to steal a couple of them. It's going to have a lot of research time, and you're going to have to invest a lot of money to get anywhere close to Nvidia. It's not just Nvidia that you're competing with at that point. AMD also has most of the graphics engineers in the market. So I don't know what Raj is going to do at Intel. I think he's going to be targeting data center rather than PC gaming, but it's very possible that a PC gaming product might come out, but it probably won't be as good as Nvidia. And if you look at Nvidia and their quarterly reports and their financial year report, they're doing really, really well. They're growing in almost every sector, whether that's automotive, the professional market, workstations, high performance computing, the data center, PC gaming, and mining might even become sort of a new sector or segment all in of itself. So we're going to just really have to accept Nvidia being ahead right now, because I can't see AMD really getting out of this. It's going to take a good amount of time for them to really catch up. They're going to have to get a lot more market share. Intel, possible, but I really doubt it considering they just lost their CEO, and on the CPU side, they're not doing so well either, with AMD probably going to beat them in the future. So yeah, I think that's it for today. It's kind of a grim picture, but be at least happy that something new is out. I'm going to follow a lot more of this. I'm going to give you guys more details when we get that Gamescom presentation. If you guys have anything to say, leave a comment, like the video if you liked it, subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this and for those upcoming reviews of the new series, and I'll talk to you guys later.